Well, keeping our focus on the trip to China and how it is going to impact on our economy. And we're joined this morning by Mr. Anogwi Anyanwu, who is the CEO, Main Street Limited, and former Executive Director of Main Street Bank. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you, Chamberlain.
Well, a lot of focus on that, trying to look at some of the details, but you've also gone through some of those. But what sticks out for you?
Well, what sticks out for me is that the president's trip to China calls attention to the fact that we need to have more discussion on our economy. Because the president's trip to China is not the first time that a Nigerian president has gone to China. It's not the first time that Nigeria has signed agreement with the Chinese for infrastructural development, for investment, But the difference this time is that there's a lot of noise, and it puts people's mind to the fact that what are we doing with China? What is the gain for us? How can we make our relationship with China work? Why didn't the other agreements we signed, why didn't they work? And then it also gives us a chance to kind of query this trip to say, okay, fine, you've told us this is the outcome of the trip, but what are the nitty-gritty? How does it drill down to the man on the street? Information actually from the trip has not been very well packaged. The ordinary man on the street cannot get a full grasp of what this trip is all about. And because of it, there's a lot of, what I call beer parlor discussions to say, well, Naira will soon come down to 140 to the dollar because we've gone to China and all that. So, but for me, the important thing is that it brings attention to the fact that we need to interrogate our relationship with China in such a way that it will become beneficial to us and to them.
What kind of things should we be looking out for in that interrogation?
In that interrogation, we have to ask the people in government, what are the full details of the agreements signed? What do we, and when I say we, I mean the ordinary man on the street, the people who are in government, what do we need to do, each and every one of us, to get benefits from the trip to China? For example, the people who signed this agreement, did we ask ourselves the real benefits of these agreements to Nigeria? Let's take, for example, the currency swap deal. For China, what is it aiming at? China has been trying to make the renminbi a reserve currency. It has not fully happened, but a lot of people have their reserves, a lot of countries have their reserves, in China. No, dollar is the main currency, but a lot of people have
the renminbi in their reserves.
Yeah, a lot of countries have their reserves in the renminbi. Okay, okay. But the renminbi has not become a full reserve currency, and that's where China is going. China has currency swap agreement with about 31 countries, okay, including South Africa. Nigeria is the second country in Africa to have a currency swap agreement with China. So what China is doing is to build up its reputation, the reputation of its currency as a reserve currency as opposed to maybe the dollar or the Swiss franc. So that's what they stand to gain. What do we stand to gain as Nigeria? Okay? When you tell us that, okay, because we have signed agreement with China, so the exchange rate is going to come down, is that the truth? Of course, that's not true. Because what determines exchange rate policy is what you earn from your exports. Today, our export of crude to China is about $2 billion. But we import from China over $16 billion worth of goods. So how will we make this currency swap help in reducing the pressure on the FX. That is detailed work that needs to be done by the people in government, and they need to explain it to us so that we can key in and say, okay, this is where the government is going, let's follow them and go there.
You know what I see there from your explanation, while we wait for that explanation from the government, I also read Fashola on the back page, the minister on the back page of This Day yesterday, trying to also break it down. But you said the ordinary Nigerian, how does he understand and get all of that import, which he has given his own bird's eye view of what his experience is in China. But from your analysis, it would then mean that we need to also look inwards if we really want to get that side by side. If you say, ultimately, we still have not been able to match up the $2 billion from the oil that goes out, to match it with about 16 billion which we bring in, then we'll have to come back to look how we can develop our sectors here so that we can now say we have X amount that we can export before we can talk about the reduction that some people are also looking at when it comes to the forex. Is that what it means?
Yeah, what it means is that the reduction in the forex that people are looking at is not going to happen immediately. It will happen over time, and it will happen based on hard work.
Done in Nigeria?
Done in Nigeria, yes. Because what we're earning is finite. For example, you know, recently, Angola just overtook Nigeria as the biggest exporter of crude oil from Africa. What that means is that the volume of crude we're even exporting has dropped slightly, you know, because of the challenges of pipeline vandalization and all that. The other things we export are not many. So the foreign exchange earnings still comes from oil. But the swap with China will start making sense, for example, when the investment in solid minerals, you know, begin to bear fruit, and then you begin to export the solid minerals to China. So that will increase the volume of our own money that is in their hands. The other thing we need to do, and which government has to explain to all of us, is that most of the things we import from China are things we really don't need. You know, when you go for parties, you see us struggling for plastic, fans, all those things. And in the nature of man, when they start sharing those things at parties, instinctively you start struggling for them. But in each and every one of our houses, those things are junk. They're occupying space. We don't need them. So government also has to educate people to say, listen, it's not everything you see you buy. It's not everything that the Chinese make that looks fanciful that you should buy with our hard-earned foreign currency. So whether it is we have swapped our money to yuan and then we're using yuan to buy, or it's still dollar we're going to use to buy, as long as we keep on buying frivolous things that we don't need, we'll still have pressure on our foreign exchange, whether it is yuan or dollar or Swiss franc.
So do you think that then the restriction, because you know the CBN have this restricted items, do you think they should keep the restricted items then?
Well, that's a tough question to answer because, you know, we are a signatory to the World Trade Organization, you know, so when you start restricting trade, you have problem. But I think those restrictions have kind of worked. And the way CBN has done it is not that they are banned. No, they are not banned. What they have said is, if you have other sources for FX and you want to bring these things in, by all means, bring them in. You know. So,
but you know, go ahead.
Yeah. So the point I was making is, so if you can get your foreign exchange by money you have earned from outside, or Nigerians who have money outside, or Nigerians who want to remit money back home, and you're able to get that foreign exchange, you can use it to buy those restricted items. So it's not banned. So in that sense, I'm not sure it's an infraction on the World Trade Organization treaty.
So, I mean, my question was, do you think then that the CBN should still keep the restricted items?
I think they don't really have much choice. They have to keep those restricted items.
So regardless of the currency, they should do that?
Oh yes, oh yes. They will still need to keep those restricted items. Because, you see, the swap entails that it is official money, okay, that we're going to go give to China. And we're going to pay them from our official sources. But the restricted items are such that people who get money from autonomous sources can use it to import them. Take, for example, you know, part of the trade we have with China are what I call not valid for FX transactions, which means a trader in Idumota or at Alaba or in Aba or in Abuja buys dollars from the streets or from the BDC, puts it in his pocket and travels to China, gives it to his supplier, okay, and either flies in the goods or ships it. Those things may be restricted, but they are not banned items, they are not contraband.
And I understand that. What I'm saying is, I mean, eventually, whether or not you like that, it still puts pressure on the dollar, especially on the parallel market. It continues to widen that gap between the official rate and what is obtainable on the parallel market. And if the CBN is beginning to say that, you know, oh, because we have this currency swap, you know, yuan will be, you know, more freely available and we'll be able to use it, a lot of people might think that, you know, the restrictions won't apply. But since you already say that this, you know, pressure will come back on whatever currency it is we decide to use as our forex reserve, it should be wise for the CBN then to, you know, still keep some of these restrictions.
I believe that CBN will keep those restrictions, whether we're using yuan as a trading currency with China or not. They will still need to keep those restrictions.
Okay.
In any case, the autonomous trader I talked about is not going to be able to have access to the yuan, because the yuan will still go through the bank for LCs, you know. It's just that instead of denominating the LCs in dollars, you're going to denominate them in yuan.
Okay.
You know.